everybody. Today we're talking about size. I'm trying to move through this at a fairly quick pace for you guys, make it a little bit shorter for you. So there's a couple things that we need to talk about when we talk about size and design. If we talk about size, obviously, then we're talking about how large or small the thing itself is. But if we're talking about scale, which is what we're really talking about when we say size in terms of design, in terms of art, then scale is how large or small the thing is in relation to both the format and the surrounding elements. It's also how large or small the thing is in relation to you. So we'll say size, and we'll use that interchangeably with scale, but know that what we're really saying is scale when we say size in art. So the size of things can do a couple of different things for the work of art. If we look at this sculpture by Mueck here of this old lady, you can see to the left of the sculpture is a real person. So that's going to give you your scale for this sculpture. The size of the sculpture, the scale of it in relation to you, changes your relationship to the sculpture. These sculptures by Mueck are, well, they're doing a few things. First of all, they're incredibly detailed. All of the hairs are placed in by follicles and everything, and there's just a ton of detail on the skin. So it's incredibly realistic, but then the size of it is off-putting. And he'll do this in the reverse as well. He'll make incredibly lifelike sculptures of the human form in small scale, and that also alters your relationship to the subject matter. So here's one example of how size can change things. Here's a sculpture by Claes, Oldenberg, and Duccio van Bruggen, shuttlecocks. This is outside the Kansas City Art Institute, and you can see the museum in the background there. And actually on the other side of the museum is another shuttlecock. So there are these two giant badminton shuttlecocks, and it changes your relationship to the subject matter. Oldenberg is known for taking these sort of ordinary, banal, just normal objects from everyday life and either making them super huge like this, or creating soft sculptures, which is a different sort of deal. It creates a different relationship to the subject matter. But there you can see it's quite playful, this intense enlargement of just this little shuttlecock into something so huge. Yeah, so size, the scale of the thing altering our relationship to it. Here, of course, are the pyramids at Giza. Size, in this instance, the scale of it, the immensity of it is meant very specifically to make you feel small in relation to it. These are holy sites, right, in relation to the pharaohs of the ancient Egyptian kingdom. And these are meant to do exactly what they do. They impress upon you the immensity of the ruler here, of the pharaoh. A very similar thing is happening here in the Pantheon in Rome. You can see the people milling about in the bottom there, and this huge, massive dome with the oculus, which is the opening in the top of the dome there. This oculus creates a connection to the gods. This is what the Pantheon is. It's the home for the pantheon of gods. And again, this architecture, the scale of it is meant to make you feel small in the presence of something greater than. Scale can also be used in the way that Peter Doig is using it here, where he's actually tightening down the scale, making something very small this cop car and the cop in this painting by called Echo Lake. The size of the subject matter, that they're so small in relation to the format, creates a sense of, or well, helps to create a sense of foreboding, of alienation and isolation in the picture plane. So having very small objects inside a larger scale format can create that very different sort of feeling for you. Here's a painter, Eleanor Ray. She's a contemporary painter, and include this photo of her because you can see behind her her paintings, and you can see how large they are. They're quite small. These are probably, around 3 by 5 inches or so, perhaps a little bit bigger, up to maybe 7 inches at the most, but they're quite small. And so this is a different sort of relationship to scale, because here's a close-up. Okay, so we see 7 by 8 3/4 inches. It's a little bit bigger than I thought, but not much. It's a very small painting, but the scale of it in relation to you, of the painting in relation to you, is counteracted by the subject matter and the scale of that subject matter. This landscape feels immense and feels very large, but the fact that it's created on such a small painting, on such a small format, here's another example here, another sort of landscape, creates a tension between the viewer and the work of art, that you see this very tiny thing on the wall, and it calls to you, says, come over here and take a look at me. And when you get up to it, it opens up into a very large vista like this. So that relationship, that even a small thing, if the scale of the objects inside that small painting is used properly, it can still feel quite large. And this creates a sort of psychological tension between you and the work of art. One thing that you'll see quite often, especially when you get into art history, is this idea of hierarchical scale, so that there's an hierarchy of importance. Got to bring up Star Wars again. Here is Luke Skywalker from the final act of The Last Jedi, and the framing of the shot shows him as being much larger in relation to the First Order walkers, which are shown to be massive, huge machines in the film. So the shot here, the composition, reverses the size relationship, the scale relationship between the objects. And this is an example of hierarchical scale, where Skywalker is being shown as being more important. The larger object is given more weight, more importance in the composition. So the legend of this Jedi lives on in a much larger scale than these machines of war. There's also a nice, in the shot, contrast between geometric and organic shapes. Here is a much more art historical example of that same thing. We've looked at the palette of Narmer before, but here is a detail of it, and you can see the pharaoh on the left hand here, much larger than the person next to him, and that person is much larger than the servants there carrying the pharaoh's banners. So that the scale here is showing the importance, that this is what you should pay the most. Well, it's not really saying that this is what you should pay the most attention to, but it's telling you that this is the really important stuff, and these people over here are less important. And you can see on the right-hand side the decapitated falling army there that the pharaoh has defeated. Here's another example of hierarchical scale. This is a painting by Duccio Buoninsegna. Little bit of tidbit of information. Buoninsegna means good teacher in Italian. This is his Maestà, or the Child and Mary in Majesty, and you can see that they are very large. The baby Jesus is just about the same size as the saints flanking them, the saints and angels all along the side of this throne, and the saints lining the top of the image as well are all quite small in comparison to Mary and Jesus. So here we're being told what is the most important thing. Also, their central location within the picture frame is telling us quite a lot about what is important here. This is a good example, actually, of a good use of symmetry. Some of you guys are turning in some really symmetrical designs, and symmetry is a dangerous place to go because it can become quite boring. Once you know one half of the image, you already know, can project in your head what the other half looks like. But here, Duccio is breaking up that symmetry by the orientation of Mary facing one way and Christ facing another, that along both sides of the mother and child, all of the saints and angels and everything are quite different, actually. So there's a feeling of symmetry, but it's broken up, and new and more interesting combinations are shown to you at the same time. This painting lives in Siena, Italy, and Duccio was commissioned to create the greatest painting in the world in the 1300s. And this is the result of that commission. It's a damn good painting. It's really something else that you don't really get, obviously, the same effect on this image, this reproduction on your computer screen here. You can see the scale of it, 84 inches tall by 156 inches wide. It's bigger than you expect it to be. And this is actually only the central panel. This was going to be an altarpiece, and it was, and there were other paintings that flanked the top and bottom and the sides of this as well, which is why there's this sort of trapezoidal architectural form running along the top side of it. This is part of how the altarpiece fit together. I'm not here to push any sort of religion, and I am not a religious man myself, but this painting is like looking into the face of God. It's its very purpose. Anyway, enough about this painting. Hierarchical scale here. This is the equestrian statue of Marcus Aurelius, Emperor of Rome. And you can see in relation to the picture or the person who's having their picture taken with it, how much larger this thing is. Equestrian statues play on you in a couple of different ways. One, the image of the person riding the horse, usually a man, general, in this case, the emperor. This is a symbol of conquest. The emperor here has conquered this wild animal, this horse. Secondly, these things are put above you, which creates a relationship of subservience between you and this image of the emperor. Third, that it is larger than you, again, makes you feel small in its presence. It's why this bullshit is so dangerous. This is a statue in Memphis, Tennessee, an equestrian statue of Nathan Bedford Forrest, the founder of the Ku Klux Klan. These Confederate statues like this play on you in the exact same psychological way that this equestrian statue of Marcus Aurelius does. It makes you feel small and less important, and that this person, though he is quite literally a loser, is a conqueror. So it's painting them in a wholly unjustified light. It's why they should all be torn down. So size can be used in a different way as a space creator. Here's a painting by a contemporary artist, Giordanne Salley, called Double from 2019. And the size of the feet in this painting are quite large. So the scale of them is quite large in relation to the format, to the picture plane. This creates a close, intimate space because we know feet to be actually a small part of the overall human form. This tells us how close we are, that we're quite close to these this subject of two people here coming together on a beachfront. So this creates a shallow depth to the image, an intimate, close relationship with the subject matter. Here's another example of that by Giordanne Salley. This is called Arm Window, in which the arm and the back and the buttocks of this human figure, again, quite large in relation to the overall picture plane, is framing this moon, which is also quite large and takes up a large amount of space of the picture plane. This, again, creates an intimate space, but it also helps to show us that the figure is in front of the moon, and that the moon here, represented by this large, possibly the sun, I'm going to call it a blood moon, though, that this moon, which takes up such a large amount of the space of the window that's created by the arm, back, and buttocks of this figure, helps to compress the space to flatten the picture plane towards us. Here's a painting by David Park called Ball Game on the Beach. And we can see from the top right corner, the human figure here is quite close to us, is blown up quite large. And as we move to the right, the figures get smaller and smaller and smaller, so that the size of these similarly repeating shapes of the human form is creating a space for the picture, the painting, to exist in. Here's another painting by David Park. Again, this repetition of this human type of shape, from larger to smaller and smaller and smaller, moving back to the figure on the boat there, creates a sense of depth in the picture plane. And we've looked at this example before, but it's always good to come back to it. Edouard Manet's Le Déjeuner sur l'herbe, the luncheon on the grass, where obviously the group of three figures in the foreground is larger than the woman bathing in the back, helping to create a sense of space. But Manet's doing some really tricky stuff with the space. If we follow the space of this painting as it's presented to us, and the scale of the boat, which you can see located above the head of the fellow with the black cap, you would expect the figure bathing in the lake or pond or river in the background to be actually quite smaller than she is. And we've talked about the way that this image creates a sense of balance in depth, that there is a pressure, a weighted pressure between us and that bather in the background. And that pressure is created by actually making that figure larger than what she would actually appear to us if we came across this scene in real life. So the size here and the scale, the relational size between the figures, is both creating space, but at the same time it is compressing that space back towards us. This is an economy of means. Manet is pulling off a couple of tricks with one fell swoop here. And that's it. Made it through it pretty quick today. Let's look at your homework. Read the Maitland-Graves PDF on the proportion chapter, and your studio problem number 8, using variable line weight, in a square format, create a unity of shape and a variety of size. Give me 10 thumbnails and 10 variations, and of course your final mounted one. That's it. If you have any questions, email me.